It's a few days before Halloween, but I suppose it's a good enough time to go through the game I picked up for Halloween 2014. This time around, it's Evil Dead: Fistful of Boomstick. If you've never watched any of the Evil Dead movies, let's just say you're missing out on a lot. In short, the main character, named Ash and played by the legendary Bruce Campbell, heads out to a cabin for a short vacation with a few friends. In the basement, they find an old recorder, and when playing it back, accidentally unleash a curse that possesses humans. In short, it makes them deadites. Ash finds a way to defeat the curse, although he ends up losing his hand in the process, and now walks around with a chainsaw affixed to it. I'm not going to go into details, because it's all part of the fun of the movies. Anyway, this game takes place shortly after the events of the movies. Ash is in a bar watching a show about some professor going on about the occult, and of course unleashes the Deadite curse in Dearborn, the town that the game takes place in. Ash gets a bit upset, and sets off to find out how to stop the evil once again. Right from the start, Ash begins with his trusty boomstick and chainsaw. With this combination, the game allows you to choose how you want to dispatch your enemies. Ammo isn't exactly plentiful for the firearms, but it's not scarce either. You'll have enough to be able to kill most of the bigger groups, if need be, but at the same time you want to salvage what you can. Most weapons can also have different ammo types. For example, the old hand cannon that you find in level 4 has your regular shot and also a grape shot. The shotgun gets armor-piercing and explosive shells in addition to the standard shots. Of course, these secondary ammo types are often a bit harder to come by, but the damage that they do is typically worth it. Perhaps I'm getting too far ahead of myself. Maybe I should explain the gameplay. Well, for starters, it's your standard action fare. Ash runs around, completing the objectives that are given to you, and blasting deadites. There's only 6 levels in the game, but they each take about a few hours to complete, at least on the first playthrough. It's not necessarily that there's a lot of objectives, but instead the layout of the town is each stage is a real labyrinth. To make things a bit more frustrating, there's absolutely no map system. Don't worry, you'll be running in circles a few times before you realize that you're overlooking a pathway. Enemies respawn indefinitely, which makes the game at least a little bit more exciting. Because of this, you won't have to worry too much about running around with nothing to do but find a person to talk to or item to find. On the other hand, this means you'll have to constantly be aware of your surroundings, as deadites can and will sneak up on you constantly. So you might think that because enemies respawn that you'll be running out of ammo frequently. Well, not necessarily. Deadites have a tendency to drop ammo in small health packs on occasion. For this reason, if you use a melee weapon frequently, you can amass a large array of ammo without really trying. However, health, on the other hand, is a much rarer drop, and that is what can really piss me off about this game. See, there's 3 different health power-ups. One increases the max amount of life by 1 bar, but does not fill it at all. The small health packs are dropped by deadites, and refill about half of a life bar. Finally, you can find a large health pack, which is carried in your inventory and can be used at any time. This only heals you for 2 life bars. This doesn't seem to be nearly enough. There were many times in the game that I was running around at dangerously low levels because I didn't want to waste all my health packs and instead save them for emergencies, such as times when I'm overrun and haven't saved in a long time. The reason why health packs should have been more frequently is because the battles of the game can be a bit strange. The best way to explain it is that it can be difficult to properly aim at your enemies with a melee weapon. This is even true at times when using a sidearm, simply because aiming forces the camera to try and locate the nearest target. The issue is that the camera can occasionally focus out of the nearest enemy at a different angle, and therefore you can't see them coming and take unnecessary damage. What compounds this is that the deadites often swarm you in packs of 3. If you're lucky, one of them may drop a small health pack, but by the time you're done with that battle, it may have just been enough to break even. Without using the larger health power-ups, I found that it's very difficult to recover your health and keep it that way. The cool thing about the battles, though, is how easy it is to attack. X uses the melee weapon, and Square uses your firearm. Or you can think of it as X is Ash's right hand and Square is his left. You'll never have to manually reload your gun, as Ash does it automatically. If you decide to press L1, Ash targets the nearest deadite. As already mentioned, this can cause some camera controls, but it's often better to deal with the camera than trying to target a deadite manually. Ash also gets to use spells that he may find in the game. By pressing and holding R1 and then pressing a combination of buttons that consist of the face buttons, Ash can consume a bit of the deadite's soul power to perform the spell. The soul power is the green meter on the top right of the screen. The only way to restore this meter is to kill deadites. They'll drop glowing green orbs when they die, and these are what powers the spells. Some of the spells are more useful than others. Rain of Fire, for example, can be a lifesaver if you pull it off before becoming completely overrun. Lightning doesn't seem to be too powerful though. You also have to use some of these spells to solve puzzles, like the extra strength spell to open a locked gate, or possess deadite spell to get items that are far beyond your reach. You do need to keep in mind that casting a spell renders you unable to move, so it makes you a sitting duck. You have to try to remember to cast a spell quickly before you get attacked, as taking damage cancels out any spell you're trying to cast. There's two ways that you can save the game. One method is to hit a checkpoint, which is a point either before one of the 3 bosses or at the end of your stage. The other is to use one of the save tokens that you find laying around the town. As important as it is to save, you need to keep in mind that these tokens are in limited supply, so if you use too many of them, you may be unable to save until you find more, which can really put you in a hell of a hard spot if it's been a while since you've saved and are near death. Which reminds me that you need to replay cutscenes due to dying. You can't skip them. It's annoying, but fortunately most of them aren't too terribly long. Oh, and you also need to be very careful on when you save. There are a few areas in the game that can render it impossible to move on. One is in Civil War era Dearborn, where you're trying to get into a fort that's being sieged by deadites. You'll find vortexes that are spawning in extra deadites, which you've learned earlier in the game can be closed by inserting something made of pure silver in it. Well, you find a bar of silver and then you just close down one vortex, only to turn around and find that there's another one blocking your way and there's no more silver in sight. Oh fuck. I had to make up for about 30 minutes worth of game time just to reach this spot again. This time I knew that I had to close the right vortex, but why make it impossible to continue? Why not put a second bar of silver somewhere, maybe in a more difficult to reach area? That kind of stuff pisses me off. There's also an area in the final stage where you have to open a door by possessing a deadite guardian. But if you kill them all, they may not spawn nearly as frequently. I waited here for about 10 minutes and none ever came. If THQ thinks I'm going to run around the stage trying to find one and luring it all the way back to this door, they can go fuck off. Another tiny issue with the game is that the second half of it features levels that are way too dark. Sure, I could turn up the brightness settings of my TV, but why should I have to do that? Of course, Evil Dead Fistful of Boomstick doesn't feature any brightness settings in their video options. What a bunch of crap! I mean, it's not game breaking, but it would have been nice to have. You can still see deadites, and items have a light glow to them, but again, it would have been nice to enjoy the environment at least a little bit more. Speaking of, the town of Dearborn is the setting for the game. Other than stages 3 and 6, all of the game takes place in the town. The problem is that the stages start to look way too identical. Starting in level 4, Ash goes back in time, and you'll be forced to see Dearborn in different time frames, but it's still Dearborn and it still has the same layout. It starts to get a bit boring when you're killing the same enemies in the same atmosphere. And in case you're wondering, Stage 3 is a museum, and Stage 6 still takes place in the town of Dearborn, but mainly in the underground caverns. Because Bruce Campbell voices Ash, naturally there's plenty of one-liners to be thrown around. When killing deadites, Ash will occasionally spout out a taunt, but if you wish, you can press triangle to force Ash to say something. They do get repetitive, but it's funny while you get the fresh ones. Here's a few of them.
Your pain, my gain. Kids these days, huh? Come on, what's a little death? Hey, nice face, let me fix it for you. Does your mother kiss that face? Whoa, were you born that ugly?
Evil Dead Fistful of Boomstick isn't a horrible game, but it does start to get stale in the later levels. The combat can be a bit clunky at times, and you can get overrun fairly easily, but it's still a pretty solid system. If you're into Evil Dead at all, give this one a shot, or at least rent it. And see if you like it, and then decide if you want to buy it. Final score? 7 out of 10. There's Reaper. Check me on Facebook, facebook.com/ReapersReviews. Have a happy and safe Halloween, and happy fragging.